December 14, 2023. At precisely 10 a.m., in the very heart of the capital, law enforcement unveiled what they heralded as one of the most significant drug busts in recent memory. This wasn't merely about the staggering hauls of cocaine or the mountains of illicit cash. It was about two distinct men, each convinced they were untouchable kings, each leaving a trail of arrogance that would ultimately betray them. One meticulously flaunted his stacks of money through encrypted phones, certain his digital fortress would shield him from justice. The other, emboldened by his own legend, filmed himself boasting, declaring himself the Pablo of East London, believing the streets bowed to his every command. But what happens when unwavering self-belief meets the cold, hard reality of an approaching investigation? The price of such hubris, as they would soon discover, was far steeper than any drug deal. When the walls inevitably closed in, their carefully constructed empires crumbled with a speed they could never have imagined. This is the unsettling chronicle of London's most arrogant dealers, and the spectacular downfall that awaited them. The journey of Helios Nanj, a man who would rise to become the chief organizing mind of a nationwide drug network, did not begin with the flash of cocaine shipments or the clandestine exchange of encrypted devices. His story truly begins years earlier, under circumstances far more desperate and uncertain, long before the whispers of Kingpin attached themselves to his name. Born in Albania, Nanj was just 15 years old when he entered the United Kingdom, smuggled precariously in the back of a lorry. It was a perilous journey, one taken by countless others seeking a glimmer of opportunity, a promise of safety, or a desperate escape. Yet, for Nanj, that path, fraught with danger, soon veered sharply into the murky depths of organized crime. In the years that followed, Nanj would openly boast of nearly 2 decades immersed in criminality. An astonishing admission, one that would echo with chilling irony when he eventually stood before the cold gaze of justice. To the casual observer, his outward life was unremarkable, giving little away. He presented himself as a diligent construction laborer, a man seemingly content to blend seamlessly into the vast, bustling working class of London. But beneath this thin veneer, investigators would later reveal, lay an elaborate disguise, a meticulously crafted cover for the true scale of the empire he was quietly, ruthlessly, constructing. What secrets lay hidden beneath this everyday facade? Behind the scenes, far from the concrete dust and building sites, Nanj was cultivating a very different existence. He meticulously forged connections within both the Albanian and London underworlds, a step-by-step ascent through the ranks. He earned a reputation, not for brute force, but for an ambitious, disciplined, and utterly ruthless nature, qualities essential for navigating the brutal hierarchy of the criminal world. By his mid-30s, the teenager who arrived without papers had transformed into a man with access to international supply lines, a reach few could ever hope to attain. This wasn't the slow, grinding climb of a typical street dealer. Nanj's rapid ascent was fueled by an intoxicating blend of calculated ambition and undeniable arrogance. He genuinely believed he could outsmart law enforcement, and, subtly yet dangerously, he began to flaunt his success. To some, he was a devoted family man, a father to a young son, living a seemingly ordinary life. To others, he appeared as a successful businessman, one who clearly enjoyed the finer things life had to offer. But to the keen eyes of the authorities, a different truth was slowly emerging. Helios Nanj was on the verge of being unmasked as one of the most significant drug importers operating within the UK. By the time police began to shift their focus in his direction, Nanj had already laid the intricate foundations of a multi-million-pound cocaine empire, a colossal structure that, despite its apparent strength, was about to begin unraveling, piece by agonizing piece. Behind the locked doors of his clandestine operations, Nanj proved to be no ordinary dealer. Police later estimated that his sophisticated network had trafficked a staggering half-ton to 3/4 of a ton of cocaine into the United Kingdom, an astronomical amount, worth millions on the streets. His operation was a masterclass in meticulous planning, a complex web of couriers, strategically placed safe houses, and a cadre of trusted lieutenants. Nanj ensured that drugs flowed seamlessly from international suppliers, funneled with precision across the length and breadth of Britain. From his London hub, he established intricate pipelines that snaked into distant regions, reaching even into Gloucestershire, where local dealers kept the illicit trade churning. Couriers, often unaware of the full scope of the operation, transported drugs expertly concealed within vehicles, frequently carrying multiple kilos at a time, while others handled the perilous work of cash collection and laundering. Investigators would later reveal that Nanj possessed the power to arrange shipments of 200 kilos at a single time, a capability few, if any, within the UK drug market could rival. His standing in the criminal underworld was so formidable that even police admitted there were likely very few individuals who operated at his level. But this illicit business wasn't solely about moving product, it was also about the lavish lifestyle it afforded. When officers eventually executed a raid on his home in Wandsworth, they discovered a treasure trove, designer clothes and shoes valued at approximately £40,000, alongside clear evidence of luxury cars and expensive watches. A single Rolex timepiece alone commanded a price close to £10,000. For Nanj, the empire was more than just a means to money. It was a testament to his status, a tangible display of his perceived invincibility. Nanj's arrogance extended far beyond merely supplying cocaine. He deliberately positioned himself as a mentor, a guide for other aspiring traffickers, demonstrating precisely how to construct their own international import operations. He was no longer simply involved in crime, he was actively shaping its very landscape. By 2020, Helios Nanj had irrevocably cemented his place as one of the most powerful cocaine traffickers in Britain. But, perhaps ironically, it was the very same arrogance that allowed him to so brazenly flaunt his wealth and confidence that would soon open the crucial cracks law enforcement needed to bring his world crashing down. What kind of digital breadcrumbs would a man so confident in his security inadvertently leave behind? For years, Helios Nanj operated within the deepest shadows, utterly convinced that his communication lines were beyond compromise, completely untouchable. The very core of his self-assuredness resided within an encrypted device, a tool that countless criminals across Europe mistakenly believed was impenetrable. For Nanj, this device became the absolute command center of his sprawling empire. Under the alias Boboku, the same affectionate nickname he reserved for his 5-year-old son, Nanj confidently advertised himself as a wholesale supplier, a king of the illicit trade. To him, the handle was just another layer of protection, an extra veil of anonymity. But to the astute investigators, it was becoming the unsuspecting key that would ultimately unlock his true identity. The device, purportedly secure, contained a trove of deeply personal information, cherished family photos, heartwarming birthday messages signed by the Nanj family, and other intimate fragments of his private life. Yet, amidst these personal touches, Nanj also sent images of colossal piles of cash, neatly stacked packages of cocaine, and even self-portraits in designer clothes and expensive sunglasses. He brazenly complained about having £1.6 million in cash stashed during lockdown, money he couldn't safely move abroad. In another chilling message, he admitted to supplying over 500 kilos of cocaine and even used the device to actively coach other dealers, sharing the very strategies that defined his empire. But what Nanj didn't know, what he couldn't possibly fathom, was the seismic shift unfolding behind the scenes. In May 2020, a clandestine joint operation, spearheaded by Europol and the National Crime Agency, achieved the unthinkable. They cracked encrypted. The supposedly impregnable network suddenly transformed into an unimaginable goldmine of incriminating evidence for law enforcement across the continent. Every single encrypted message sent by Nanj, every boast, every transaction, every secret, was now meticulously stored in the hands of investigators. In his profound arrogance, he had, in essence, crafted a digital diary of his entire empire. And it was only a matter of time before those very messages would bring his meticulously built world crashing down around him. Helios Nanj's empire did not, however, collapse overnight in a single, dramatic moment. Its unraveling began with what appeared to be a relatively small arrest, an isolated incident that would, unbeknownst to anyone at the time, ignite a complex chain reaction leading directly back to him. In May 2020, officers from Gloucestershire Police apprehended Dahimé Trigini, a local dealer who had been steadily supplying cocaine across the Gloucester area. At the moment of his arrest, Jeannie was found in possession of 2 kilograms of cocaine and approximately £60,000 in cash. On its own, it might have seemed like just another mid-level dealer being taken off the streets, a minor victory in the ongoing fight against drug crime. But keen-eyed detectives noticed something else in Jeannie's possession, something that would fundamentally alter the course of the entire investigation: an encrypted phone. This device, initially just another piece of evidence, proved to be the crucial, undeniable link. When law enforcement finally gained access to its contents, investigators quickly discovered that it wasn't merely being used for local, street-level sales. It was connected, irrevocably, to someone far higher in the criminal chain, an upstream supplier who operated far beyond the familiar streets of Gloucester. And that supplier, the digital trail screamed, was none other than Helios Nanj. The timing of this discovery was critically significant. At the very moment Jeannie's device was compromised, the wider encrypted network had also been decrypted, allowing investigators an unprecedented, complete historical view of Nanj's own elusive handle. From that point, detectives embarked on the painstaking process of piecing together the complex puzzle. They didn't just rely on the incriminating content of the messages. They combined this digital evidence with sophisticated cell site analysis and ANPR, automatic number plate recognition, camera data. By meticulously tracking how Nanj's encrypted device and his personal phone consistently connected to the same locations, whether it was his home in Wandsworth or while traveling by car, they were able to definitively prove both devices belonged to him. Among the vast logs of messages was one chillingly ironic entry. Nanj had, at one point, warned his associates that he was temporarily pausing shipments into Gloucester because the area was too hot with police activity. He had absolutely no idea how terrifyingly accurate that assessment truly was. Local arrests, his own compromised encrypted messages, combined with unprecedented international cooperation, were already tightening the net around him, drawing it ever closer. When officers finally executed warrants at his property, the stark picture of his meticulously crafted double life became undeniably clear. Inside his Wandsworth apartment, they uncovered the signs of luxury previously discussed, vivid proof of the immense profits reaped from his illicit trade. Further evidence from the seized devices powerfully corroborated what investigators had already meticulously uncovered in the decrypted encrypted messages: Nanj's deep involvement in the movement of hundreds of kilos of cocaine, along with his desperate, often frustrated, attempts to funnel vast sums of illicit money abroad. What began with the arrest of a single dealer and 2 kilograms of cocaine had escalated dramatically, morphing into the largest drugs prosecution Gloucestershire police had ever witnessed. And at the very apex of that criminal chain, about to face the full, unyielding weight of the law, stood Helios Nanj. Yet, while one empire was collapsing under an avalanche of digital evidence, another equally compelling, yet vastly different, story was unfolding across East London. This was an empire built not on the careful anonymity of encrypted silence, but on a foundation of brazen arrogance, broadcast for all to see. In the densely populated, ever-shifting streets of East London, where ruthless competition constantly reshapes the drug networks, Jahan Ahmed deliberately carved out his identity. He did so not through secrecy, but through sheer, audacious arrogance. At 34 years old, residing on Stebendale Street in the vibrant Wapping area of Tower Hamlets, Ahmed craved visibility. He wanted to be seen, to be heard, and, most importantly, to be remembered. Unlike so many other dealers who thrived in the protective cloak of anonymity, Ahmed reveled in attention. He would film himself, often bragging, proudly declaring to anyone who would listen that he was Pablo, a direct, audacious nod to the infamous Colombian drug lord, Pablo Escobar. In his own mind, he wasn't just another London dealer. He was the one who truly controlled the streets, the man whose name commanded undeniable weight across East London. He even went so far as to dub himself East London's finest, not in hushed whispers, but in confident recordings later recovered by the police. But the reality of his operation was, in truth, far smaller than the grandiose image he so meticulously cultivated. Ahmed didn't preside over global cartels or command billions. He ran a network of 3 distinct drug lines, a scale we will delve into in just a few moments. Still, within that narrower reach, he made himself an undeniable presence. Police would later uncover over £600,000 hidden through various business accounts, irrefutable evidence of the substantial profits he was quietly, yet effectively, amassing. And yet, what truly distinguished Ahmed wasn't just the money or the drugs. It was his colossal ego. His fascination with Escobar transcended mere wealth. It was about power, about image, and crucially, about legacy. He yearned to be feared, but even more, he yearned to be known. In his own words, Ahmed claimed he had spent 10 years in the gutter, on a curfew, and still rolling like Pablo. He saw himself as a survivor, a man who had risen from hardship to become, in his eyes, untouchable. But by boasting so openly, so brazenly, he unwittingly drew the very kind of attention that careful traffickers, the ones who truly understood the game, meticulously avoided at all costs. What price would he pay for such unbridled confidence? Beneath the veneer of his public boasting, it was the steady operation of 3 distinct drug lines that powered Jahan Ahmed's criminal enterprise. Branded collectively under the ominous name Killer, these lines formed the unshakable backbone of his network, operating with ruthless efficiency from December 2021 through June 2022. In London's labyrinthine underground drug economy, these lines are everything. They serve as the critical point of contact between desperate addicts or casual users and their illicit suppliers, creating a seamless, albeit dangerous, system where customers simply call or text, and drugs are delivered. Ahmed, for all his swagger, wasn't standing on street corners. He was running a small but surprisingly sophisticated distribution model. The operation concentrated heavily on the boroughs of Tower Hamlets and East London, areas already grappling with entrenched drug markets and their devastating social consequences. By keeping the killer lines active day and night, Ahmed ensured a constant, insidious flow of heroin and crack cocaine into the community. It was this steady, unwavering rhythm of supply that created the illusion of stability and power he so often boasted about. Each line was, in essence, a miniature business unit unto itself. The operational phones were meticulously passed between trusted associates who understood their specific roles and responsibilities. With 3 separate lines running simultaneously, Ahmed skillfully multiplied both his reach into the community and, crucially, his profits. For all his outward arrogance and public bravado, Jahan Ahmed eventually came under the intense scrutiny of a targeted operation specifically designed to dismantle men like him. The Metropolitan Police had launched Operation Yamata, a long-running, strategic initiative aimed at systematically breaking apart London's pervasive drug lines and removing those who controlled them from the streets. Detectives had already meticulously mapped out the growing, insidious influence of the killer network, precisely identifying the 3 distinct phone lines that controlled the relentless flow of heroin and crack cocaine across Tower Hamlets and East London. Step by painstaking step, surveillance closed in, with officers diligently collecting intelligence on Ahmed's movements, his known associates, and the discernible patterns of his illicit business. The decisive moment arrived on June 28, 2022, when officers executed simultaneous raids on 2 key properties linked directly to Ahmed. The first target was his home on Stebendale Street in Wapping, while the second was another address clearly tied to his sprawling network. Inside these locations, police uncovered large quantities of Class A drugs, alongside more than £60,000 in cold, hard cash. Piles of illicit money and meticulously packaged heroin and crack cocaine laid bare the undeniable scale of the killer operation. But it wasn't solely the drugs and money that sealed his fate. Officers also seized multiple mobile devices and extensive financial records, providing investigators with an irrefutable, direct link between Ahmed and the notorious killer lines. And on one of those seized devices was a single, damning piece of evidence that stood out more than any other. A video Ahmed had recorded of himself, the very footage that underpinned his earlier boasts. This recording was far more than just a fleeting glimpse into his immense ego. it became a pivotal exhibit in court, undeniable proof that Ahmed was not only fully aware of his crimes but had brazenly flaunted them for posterity. Operation Yamata had achieved its purpose. The killer drug lines had been decisively smashed, the incriminating devices collected, and the evidence stacked neatly against Ahmed. But before we unveil the sentences that would ultimately decide the fate of these self-proclaimed kingpins, there's one crucial detail, a lingering gap in the story, that raises more questions than it provides answers. This particular detail stands out starkly when examining both of these significant cases. For Helios Nanj, we are told of one courier, a mid-level dealer named Dimitri Genie, whose arrest served as the unexpected thread that led to the discovery of Nanj's entire, sprawling network. Yet, beyond Genie, there is surprisingly little mention of the dozens of other couriers or the individuals running safe houses who must have been integral to keeping such a vast supply chain moving. Hundreds of kilos of cocaine simply don't traverse the country without the involvement of scores of people. Nevertheless, only fragments of that much larger network ever seemingly appeared in the courtroom. And for Jahan Ahmed, the gap in the narrative is even clearer, perhaps more unsettling. Police meticulously described his operation as running 3 separate drug lines, a setup that would unquestionably necessitate a consistent team of runners, dedicated phone handlers, and a network of secure stash locations. Yet, strikingly, no arrests of these essential middle-level figures have been reported. All the focus, all the headlines, centered squarely on Ahmed himself. This raises a pressing question for anyone following these stories. Did police truly dismantle the entire network, or did they simply remove the most visible, the most boastful, face of it? In both cases, the headlines proudly celebrated the capture of a kingpin or a self-proclaimed street boss. But the day-to-day, insidious trade of heroin and cocaine depends utterly on the countless individuals working beneath them, the unseen cogs in the criminal machine. Without more arrests at that crucial operational level, can we genuinely say these networks were destroyed? Or were they merely disrupted, waiting for someone else to inevitably step in and take the reins? What would you have done if you were an investigator on these cases? On December 14, 2023, at Gloucester Crown Court, the culmination of one of Gloucestershire's largest and most complex drug prosecutions finally reached its dramatic conclusion. Prosecutors meticulously laid out their case, presenting all the overwhelming evidence that had been painstakingly gathered, painting Helios Nanj as the undeniable chief architect of the vast, devastating operation. The defense, in a last-ditch effort, attempted to distance him from the gravity of the crimes, claiming that the incriminating messages found on the encrypted phones did not, in fact, belong to him, and that he was merely holding the devices for others. But the jury, faced with an avalanche of undeniable evidence, remained utterly unconvinced. Judge Rupert Lowe unequivocally dismissed the defense's claims as ludicrous and transparent lies, powerfully noting that Nanj had been the chief organizing mind and the big boss of a network that pushed devastating quantities of Class A drugs across the entire country. He delivered a stern reminder to Nanj that his choices had not only enriched him beyond measure but had also irrevocably destroyed countless lives and, perhaps most tragically, put his own family at grave risk of losing him for decades. In the end, the sentence was, as expected, severe. Helios Nanj, 37, of Smugglers Way, Wandsworth, London, was unequivocally jailed for 24 years for his undeniable role as the ringleader of the far-reaching conspiracy. Some reports also confirmed that Dimitri Genie, whose arrest initiated the domino effect, was sentenced to more than 10 years in prison. Meanwhile, just 3 months earlier, on September 13, 2023, at Snaresbrook Crown Court in East London, prosecutors delivered their compelling case against Jahan Ahmed, 34. They presented all the meticulously gathered police evidence, crucially including the damning video footage seized from Ahmed's own devices. Unlike Nanj, Ahmed mounted very little in the way of a defense, perhaps realizing the overwhelming nature of the evidence against him. The presiding judge, reflecting on the sheer scale of Ahmed's arrogance, sternly told him that drugs blight communities and ruin lives, and that Ahmed's brazen, almost celebratory, glorification of his crimes showcased a chilling disregard for the profound misery they caused. The sentence, much like Nanj's, followed swiftly and decisively. Jahan Ahmed, aged 34, of Stebendale Street, Tower Hamlets, was jailed for 9.5 years. What are your thoughts on these two distinct cases, the potential loopholes police may have left in their investigations, and the sentences that were ultimately handed down? Did justice truly prevail, or are there deeper questions still left unanswered regarding the ongoing war on drugs in London? Let us know your insights and predictions in the comments below. If you're eager to uncover more raw, unfiltered UK crime stories just like these, subscribe to UK crime documentaries and make sure to hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into the shadows of the criminal underworld.